You're listening to episode number 15 of Liz's Healthy Table.
Looking for a healthy new way to feed your family without the hassle and hype? Welcome to Liz's Healthy Table, where your host, registered dietitian nutritionist Liz Weiss, serves up fresh and flavorful recipes with a tasty side of science, good nutrition, and fun. Are you and your family ready for some wholesome food that tastes great too? Don't change that dial. Your food adventure starts here.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about hot new food trends and digging into the products that you may be seeing soon at a local supermarket near you. I recently returned from Chicago. I've been traveling a lot lately, and I had spent a couple of days there attending the Food and Nutrition Conference and Expo, affectionately known as FNCE in dietitian circles. So I sat in on scientific sessions while I was at the conference. I heard Sanjay Gupta from CNN. He is their medical doctor. I heard him talking about the importance of crafting compelling nutrition messages that encourage positive change. Hey, Sanjay, that's what I try to do every day. I also heard Kimbal Musk speak. He is from the kitchen community, and he's got this really cool program where they put these learning gardens into schools across the country. And the gardens are raised so that the kids, as they're playing outside, they're surrounded by fresh produce that's growing. So it's a really cool program. thekitchencommunity.org is his website. But the thing I did the most was that I walked around the Conference Expo hall, and I sampled a bunch of new food products. And, as I walked around, and I did this quite a bit, there was a lot of food products that I actually missed. I was surprised by that, but that's why I've invited fellow dietitian and trends tracker, Janet Helm, to join me on the show today. So Janet will be here in a few minutes, and she's got quite an eye for hot new food trends. So cannot wait to have her on the show. But before I introduce you to Janet, I just want to tell you a little bit more about the conference. Now, I have been a registered dietitian since 1983, but who's doing the math? And even when I was a student at the University of Rhode Island, I would once in a while, with my fellow students, if the conference was near us, we'd get in the car and we'd drive to the conference. So I want to say that I probably first started going around 1980. Yikes, that was a long time ago. And I will tell you that in 1980, FNCE was so different. When you walked into that expo hall, what you would mostly see were products that a hospital dietitian would care about. And you still see some products that are more clinical, but back then you would see lots of equipment, equipment that would help the dietitian deliver meals to hospital patients. You'd see dishwashing equipment. You would see tube feeding formulations. So really clinical stuff. And I hate to even admit this, but there were even fryolators on the expo floor. Ewy, kind of gross, but yeah, fryolators. Anyway, if you were to fast forward to the 90s, which for me feels like just yesterday, the buzz was all about cholesterol. So the expo hall was brimming with companies that were marketing their fat-free food products. Remember those Snackwell cookies at supermarkets, right? Everything was fat-free. Everything had oat bran in it. And people were just obsessed with fat. Now, I am happy to say that fat is very hip right now, the good kinds of fats. We talk a lot on the show about things like avocados and nuts, salmon, olive oil, and sardines, so rich in these heart-healthy omega-3s. And I promise you, just a sneak peek, I am going to Portugal, to Lisbon in January. And I promise you, I am going to learn to love sardines when I'm there. And maybe we'll even do a sardine show when I get back. But anyway, the expo hall, lots of nut products. So you had nut butters and nut milks and nut bars. And Janet will talk a lot more about that on the show today. We're going to talk about allergies, right? Because not everybody can eat nuts. So we saw lots of food products that were touted, and they are, as being free from the top 8 most common allergens. I actually tried a gluten-free pasta at the show, and it was, gluten-free, allergen-free, and they used really interesting ingredients in the pasta to make the pasta. One product in particular made with red lentils, pumpkin, and butternut squash. So good. So plant-based food products, very big at the show this year. Probiotics, the good bacteria that we all need to have inside our bodies to promote good health. So many companies selling products that contain probiotics. So you may be seeing these in the supermarket now, or in the future you will be. And by the way, if you have not listened to Sandra Katz on my show from episode 12, I believe, was it 13? I'd have to look back. Sorry about that. But Sandra was on the show a few weeks ago talking about fermented foods rich in probiotics. So we're very on trend here at Liz's Healthy Table. Farmers got some love at the show, and for the adventurous dietitians in the crowd, Ocean Spray, we all know the Ocean Spray company, they set up a cranberry bog. Seriously, you could put on waders, hop into the bog, and experience the harvest firsthand. Interestingly, with all the buzz about new food trends, there were some old-time favorites in the expo hall with a modern twist. Example, cottage cheese is no longer stuck in the 1950s. I'm going to tell you more about that. And even canned soups are hip again. So much to talk about today. I cannot wait. But before we introduce Janet to all of you, let me thank my sponsors. Liz's Healthy Table is brought to you by Zespri Sun-Cold Kiwi Fruit. If you need recipe inspiration, you will find dozens of ideas at zesprikiwi.com. So head on over, show them some love, and while you're there, you can like them on Facebook at Zespri Kiwi Fruit. And if you're still looking for ideas, you can head on over to bushbeans.com. Bush's Beans is another sponsor. You know I'm a huge fan of beans, and Janet and I are going to be talking more about beans on the show today because with plant-based being so hot, Bush's Beans fits right in. And finally, I'd like to thank Super Healthy Kids. Talk about trendy recipes. They're constantly moving with the times, and so if you want recipes that are on trend, that families love, you'll want to visit superhealthykids.com. Okay, everybody, let's dig into today's show. So, Janet Helm, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Liz. Fun to be with you.
Well, I am so glad you're on the show today. And as I shared with everybody earlier, you are a trends tracker. But tell my listeners a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. I am a registered dietitian in Chicago. I work in public relations, which I have for a long time. But I'm also a blogger. My blog is Nutrition Unplugged, and I talk a lot about trends. I'm kind of trend obsessed that way. So going to shows like we just got back from FNCE, but also other types of trade shows. I do a lot of coverage of what's new, including the National Restaurant Association show that's always here in Chicago. So that's been a focus a lot on my blog.
Wow. So I don't know how you do it because as I, again, shared earlier, I spent a lot of time in the expo and then I was reading all these blog posts that dietitians did. And I'm like, how did I miss this? How did I miss that? But hey, what the heck? That's why you're on the show because, we'd be here all day if we were trying to cover everything. So we'll just kind of give people the highlights. So as you think about FNCE this year, you walked through the exhibits. What was the biggest trend that kind of just jumped out at you?
Well, I think that maybe it didn't jump, but it was just kind of a lens through a lot of exhibits, and that was plant-based. And plant-based in a lot of different forms, as far as meat alternatives to dairy alternatives, or just the celebration of fruits and vegetables overall. That was common up and down the aisles. But I think one of the things that I liked best maybe about the plant-based trend was that there were some combinations of meat and plants. Like I love this idea of blending mushrooms in with ground beef, what the Mushroom Council is doing with the blend. Or the lentils booth. I love lentils and pulses, as a protein source, but they were sampling products that combined both lentils and ground meat. So it's the idea that don't have to eliminate meat entirely. It's about reducing, so cutting down, not out. So I think that's a good trend that, yes, there are ways that if you want to reduce the amount of meat that you eat, there are tasty ways to do that.
And that blended burger, just so you folks know, that's really this concept. And we're seeing this in food service, but you're going to start seeing recipes popping up in people's home kitchens. And that is that you take mushrooms, you chop them up, you saute them, so you kind of cook them down a little bit. And then you combine those mushrooms with your ground beef. And it's got the same kind of mouthfeel and umami. That's that other, sixth taste sense, where it's got that kind of beefy, hearty flavor. So you extend your beef. And so you still eat your ground beef. It's cheaper because you're not buying as much beef. And you're cutting back on meat consumption, but then you're getting more veggies in the diet. So I think it offers people a great balance. I love that observation of that trend. And, one of the things I noticed a lot of was these plant-based milks. Now, I love cow's milk. My kids have consumed it, their whole lives. We don't have to look to an alternative, but some people do. Maybe they're vegan, or maybe they just can't tolerate dairy, or whatever it might be. So there's these options out there. It started with soy milk, then coconut milk and almond milk. You're not going to get the same nutrients, but we are seeing this explosion. There was one booth that had all sorts of nut milks. They had walnut milk, and there was peanut milk there.
Peanut milk is the latest one. And I did taste that. Actually, the National Peanut Board was sampling the new milked peanuts, and they had a chocolate version of that. So it was really tasty. But as you said, it's not, and I do some work for the milk industry, the dairy industry. So it's not a nutritionally equivalent product. But for some people, these plant-based milks are an option. You do need to kind of do a nutrition comparison. But right, the nut milks were really popular, as well as nuts in many forms. I thought the peanut puff was a really interesting snack. That was the one form, and lots of nut butters, really interesting nut butters. One came in a pouch. Yum Butter was the brand that had different nut butters, and one had probiotics, some had chia seeds and hemp seeds. So the idea of nuts coming in different formats was a really interesting trend I spotted.
So, back to those peanut puffs, there's this big move. And if people listened to my peanut allergy interview a couple weeks ago, well, actually a couple months ago, there's this big shift now to introducing toddlers and babies to peanut product, because we want to actually avoid allergies by early introduction of peanut. You do this under your doctor's supervision, of course, especially if allergies run in your family. But the peanut puffs, there's a product called Bamba, which is very popular in Israel. So the product you spotted at FNCE, and I missed it somehow, that is that kind of a concept, right? The peanut puff.
Right. I thought that was very interesting. And it's intriguing, this new research showing that early introduction may actually help avoid allergies. And that seemed to be a big trend. That allergen-free was another trend that I saw of several products, including products aimed at kids, really touted the notion that they were free of the 8 major allergens, which include peanuts and tree nuts, and including they had on their label that they were school-safe snacks. And so I thought that was interesting, because that is a policy a lot of schools have, that you cannot bring any kind of nut-based snacks to school.
Right. I saw, what was our product? Busy Bee, which was a grain and nut-free snack bar. And I also spotted Sybil's free to eat. It was a rotini pasta.
Yes.
Came in really fun flavors.
Really fun flavors. I thought they were really tasty. And they had also the free of the 8 major allergens. And I took a picture of their display, because they talked about, that was really their platform. And these pastas were really quite tasty. And I had one that was made with red lentils and pumpkin and butternut squash.
I had the same one.
Yes. So I thought that was interesting. So Busy Bee and also Made Good granola bars were also school safe without peanuts and tree nuts.
And getting back to the milks, because I forgot to mention this other thing, Janet, we were talking a lot about the different nut milks, but I noticed too at FNCE there were several milks made with pea protein. So you're going to get more protein from those. I personally did not love them. However, I think if you were to add them to a smoothie, something like that, that would be really good. Or if that's what you were used to consuming, it's kind of like what you're used to. I have a friend who has coffee with coconut milk in it. I can't do that, right? So I think part of it is what your palate gets used to.
Right. I totally agree. I do think pea protein, though, is trending up. Maybe not so much in a beverage, but as far as a source of protein, there's also the pea-based snacks and pea-based pastas. So I think those are nice. But as far as a drink, it's probably not something I'd want to buy either.
But then again, we're being biased, right? That's our taste buds. But yeah, so walking through the expo floor, if you think about what it was like, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Our show is very dietitian focused, but more the hospital dietitian. And it's really become maybe a little more like that Expo East, Expo West, where we're seeing these smaller companies coming in. There was a company at this year's FNCE where they did jerky. It wasn't turkey jerky. It wasn't beef jerky. It was coconut jerky.
Coconut jerky. Yes. Yes. I think that's so interesting. And they had another product that they were just introducing that was called Cocoa Berg, or just one ingredient. It was nothing but coconut. So it was nothing but the strips of coconut, no sweetener at all. So that was a new product they were introducing. It's nice, like the Natural Products Expo that you're referring to. That's where a lot of brands want to introduce new products because they're trying to get distribution from retailers. But I think a lot of these companies are recognizing that, yes, distribution they have to have, but they also need to reach influencers that are going to help champion these products if they like them. And so they're coming now to FNCE because they recognize if we get behind some of these and we're posting them on our blogs and we're telling people, oh, this is an interesting new product, then they see value in that. And so we are getting some of these smaller natural organic type brands that are coming to FNCE. And it's interesting because that's what the trends are. That's how we can spot trends, or what are some of these new product introductions that maybe they don't have big distribution yet, but this is reflecting, I think, what the changing consumer demands are today.
And people do want fewer ingredients. They don't want the heavily processed food products landing on their table or in their kids' lunch boxes. And, I know when my boys were younger, I would go to the supermarket, and this was the time when these 100-calorie snacks were really popular because calories, that was a big topic a few years ago because obesity became a big national story. Of course, it still is. There was this focus on calories. Now there's more of a focus on clean labels and quality, value added. So if I'm going to eat those 100 calories, is it just going to be white flour, or is there going to be good nutrition packed in there? And that was one of the other things that I noticed at FNCE, that there was a lot of these sort of grab and go snacks, but more nutritious. And I will tell you, one of my favorites was Vienna. That's these roasted chickpeas. And after the show, I must have given somebody from Vienna my business card. You do that. They sent me this box of Vienna chickpea snacks. And oh my gosh, I opened up the dark chocolate one, and it's so good. You just cannot eat one handful. You have to have many handfuls. So you're getting chickpeas, which is a pulse, right? It's a bean, just so natural and so yummy and healthy. That's the kind of stuff I loved.
I do too. And that is such a encouraging trend to see that there are ways to have, convenient food, new snacks that are better for you than, just being 100 calories. Because you're right, it's the quality of those calories that really count. And I think consumers recognize that. As dietitians, this is what we're trying to talk about, the quality, not just the number of 100 calories only. And that's what I saw a lot of just, really healthier snacks, healthier convenient products. I love, the soups, ready to drink soups. I like the salad mixes, things that are just a little bit more convenient for people to get it on their table and so, or to drink on the go. Like I love the daily harvest smoothies where, the whole trend of the meal deliveries. Now you can get deliveries of smoothies. That was really interesting and made with really different types of ingredients for smoothies. I thought those were really good too.
Now, do you think that that is going overboard, delivering all the ingredients for a smoothie? Because I always think smoothies are so easy to make, right? But this product, and I saw it there as well, they deliver this frozen product to your door, and you then assemble your smoothie based on what comes in the individual containers.
Yes. I mean, maybe that, price wise, that's probably a little pricey, but they are interesting ingredients and if it's going to help somebody, have a better choice in the morning. But yes, it's not a cost effective way to do that. And, one of the things I do at home is try to get like baggies of smoothies, ingredients already kind of pre-packaged and put in a bag for the freezer. And then you pull it out and it's just kind of all ready to go. And you just add your liquid of whether that's coconut water or whatever you want to add to it or yogurt or so it's that concept. You could do that at home and just have it a little bit more convenient for you, ready to go in the freezer.
Well, the one product that you had shared in your blog post on Nutrition Unplugged was this salted caramel smoothie with sweet potato. I mean, talk about interesting ingredients: banana, dates, coconut, pumpkin seeds, chia seeds. So yeah, it is definitely a little unusual because most people are not going to do that.
They're not going to have that. Home. So and it was really tasty. Yeah, you're not going to have all of those ingredients assembled. So maybe that's, extreme. But I did like, some of the other kind of convenient products. I mean, one that I'm not sure about was, and I did see this actually at the grocery store here in Chicago, was the muffin that you would just add water to that was in a cup. Did you see that?
You know what? Somehow I missed that, but I know that I've done the mug meals before where you can make French toast in a mug or you can make muffins in a mug and cupcakes and things like that. But sometimes those mugs overflow because you don't have the right size mug or it's like it's too hot. So I get it because the muffin meal thing was so big for a while. So that was Mighty Muffins in a mug. However, those muffins were kind of high in protein, but also kind of spiked, for lack of a better word, with probiotics. That's the good bacteria. So this is a great segue into the probiotic discussion because, back in the day when oat bran, was added to everything, now we're seeing probiotics, good bacteria added. And that was a huge trend at FNCE this year.
It was a big trend. I mean, there was a whole, healthy gut pavilion. So, to have a whole section devoted to that, and then all of these different vendors that had some connection to digestive health. So probiotics was certainly a big part of that section. And maybe probiotics are about to jump the shark, as far as being added to a lot of different foods. And one of the things you have to be concerned about probiotics are those truly, at a quantity that's going to be beneficial? Are they live and active cultures? So, there's just a lot of questions around that. And now, it's in drinks, it's in like these muffins, it was in that almond butter,
and chips.
And shots.
Chips.
Yes, right. Chips. Granola was one of them. And the shots. So you can take, trying to think about it as a kind of a regimen, to have a shot. And it was like oat milk with live and active cultures. But the other thing in the Healthy Gut Pavilion is not just the probiotics, it was prebiotics. So it was looking at what's fibers, different kinds of, like there was a barley there from Australia that really talked about the research on helping to fuel probiotics. So it's the food that these good bugs need. So they were there talking about their research on their barley. And then there were a lot of products that promoted low FODMAP, are those hard to absorb carbohydrates for some people. And that was a big trend of more and more products that promoted that they were low in these FODMAPs that aggravate IBS and other digestive disorders. So that was all part of this Healthy Gut Pavilion area. So it was probiotics, but it was also prebiotics, fiber, and low FODMAP.
Wow. Yeah, lots going on in that gut pavilion. And,
Yeah.
I am like totally obsessed with kombucha. I talked about that on my fermented food show. But as I went through the pavilion, I tried some kefir. So kefir is a fermented milk product, and it's sort of like a liquid yogurt, if you will. It's got like a tart flavor to it. And Lifeway Kefir was there, and they're out with these kefir cups, which are so cute. They're like little yogurts. And there was another company called Nancy's, and they had kefir in these cute little cartons, kind of like a little milk carton that you would get with your school lunch. So making it really convenient to kind of grab and go. There was also a company called Good Belly, and they had those probiotic shots, as well as I tried this watermelon lime water, and it was like a probiotic water. And I loved the flavor of that. They also had orange, pineapple, basil, like really interesting combinations. So instead of just buying, like a juice on the go, these are these sort of probiotic waters. And Farmhouse Culture is another company. They were there last year. They have sauerkraut. They had the sauerkraut chips.
Oh, I love those products.
They were so good. They had the gut shots. So it's like you take this little shot, maybe an ounce or so, and you get your whatever billion bacteria.
I wrote about them last year as one of my FNCE trends, but they weren't here this year.
No, they were. Farmhouse Culture was there.
Oh, I missed them. See,
You
I'm
missed
missing
them.
some booths that you said you missed. I missed them. I was
Yeah.
thinking maybe I just went right by them because I already knew about their products. So
That might
but
be
yeah,
why.
I loved their products.
Well, no, they've got these chips and they're made with sauerkraut. And I said to them, wait a second. Sauerkraut, if you make it homemade, I've done that before since doing my fermented food show. But if you eat sauerkraut, you're going to get probiotics because you've made it at home. It's sort of ripening on your counter. But once you cook it or heat it, you kill the bacteria. And they said yes. And in the chips, that's indeed what happens. But then we sprinkle it with probiotics. So there's I'm like, okay. They were quite tasty, I will say. It takes a little bit of getting used to some of these products, but I think they're pretty darn good.
Well, I missed that one, but I do like the sound of it. I love sauerkraut. Well, I think the positive thing that's happening is these trends are going more mainstream. It's not just one small segment of the population that's so health focused that, there's attention to flavor and trying to introduce some of these trends into foods that people are already familiar with. And so I think it's helping to move the public along, making these trends, some of these foods that are better for you taste good and making them convenient and you can eat on the go and the distribution is greater than ever before. So I think some of these trends, these health trends are more mainstream than ever seen before.
Well, and I would totally agree with that. And when I was on the bandwagon, when my kids were younger and sort of this, school lunch was a mess. Now it's just improved so much. It's really, in fact, I'm going to give a shout out to a dietitian named Dayle Hayes, who has a website, School Meals That Rock, and she showcases all the great things going on in schools around the country. She spoke at FNCE and I sat in on her lecture and it was fantastic. And she showcased like every state in the country and something really cool going on there. But when I was on my little rant a couple of years ago and it was hard to find all these healthy products, I used to say, why is there artificial color in everything? And why is there artificial flavor? Kids don't need to eat neon foods. And now when I'm at FNCE, what I see is the big food companies jumping on this bandwagon in a big way. And what that means is that when you go and you buy, say, popsicles, I went by the Unilever booth, you can find their Simply Popsicle line, which is now made with no artificial colors or flavors, just natural colors. So you can get naturally colored popsicles at a good price point. They're everywhere. You can get Danimals, the squeezable Dan yogurt, the squeezables and the Yo tubes, naturally colored. I love that.
Terrific. It's terrific. And I think it's consumer demand. And so, yes, some of these small niche brands are they were founded in those principles, and some of the legacy brands that are seeing that they need to change, that this is what consumers want now. And so they are responding. And so I do think that that's really, really positive. But there are a lot of up and coming brands. I mean, one of the trends that I also wrote about on Nutrition Unplugged with a lot of products that are founder-led brands, that there is the founders front and center, like Rachel Paul's Happy Bars. And so they were created by Rachel Paul, and because she couldn't find what she wanted as far as products that were low FODMAP, so for her digestive issues, so she created her own bars and with her name front and center on them. And these were right now only Amazon.com. And I talked to several of these smaller brands, and right now that's the only place you can find these are on Amazon. And there's no brick and mortar store that carries them right now, but they launched with this because more and more people are buying food online. And so some of these small brands, that's where you could get them right now.
Oh, isn't that interesting? You know what? And maybe next year when we're at FNCE, we'll see more products like that because, with Amazon buying Whole Foods, people are ordering their food, just like that smoothie, that you can get delivered to your door. I'm like, well, that seems weird. But maybe that's just become such the norm as more and more people have their foods delivered.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. So I think that is, and I talked to several, like, where can you find this? Because I'm writing about it on my blog and I'm wondering, what's the distribution like? Well, right now, just on Amazon. And so that was like the mini of, and I think for Rachel Paul, if I'm not mistaken, they didn't have plans to do anything more than Amazon because people are increasingly for products that they want to have a continually order that, stocking up on things. People are turning to Amazon for that. They still want to go to the grocery store and browse and look around, but if you want something, just get it online and have it delivered. So, I talked to several of the exhibitors that was the case for their product. It was just available online.
Interesting. Yeah. And I want to just get back to some of the big brands because I'm going through my notes here. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so much to talk about. But Campbell's Soup. I went by the Campbell's Soup booth. And, you think Campbell's Soup, right? It comes in the red can. We had it when we were kids. We gave it to our kids. Well, now they have a new line called Well, Yes. And the flavors blew my mind. Okay, they had black bean with red quinoa. They had chickpea and roasted red pepper soup. All their soups had 5 to 6 grams of fiber, less than 600 milligrams of sodium, which is not bad for a soup. Most were plant-based, and the flavors were so clean and so fresh. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like a homemade gourmet soup. So thank you, Campbell's. Like, that was great. And I also noticed V8, right? I could have had a V8. We all know V8. That's an old brand. They have jumped on the green juice bandwagon. My son Simon is like addicted to green juice. So they're evolving. And then the other brand, I know you tried them, was Muna cottage cheese.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, cottage cheese has like been stuck in the 50s forever. Somebody finally said, why don't we make cottage cheese like yogurt? Comes in these little containers, fruit on the bottom, all natural, minimal ingredients. And I don't know what they did with their texture, but it's like this really creamy texture. Did you try them?
Absolutely. And brilliant single serve. I remember just that big carton of cottage cheese. My mom always had that in the refrigerator for her lunch. And that ugly big carton. And here these, the Muna cottage cheese, single serve containers, just like yogurt, with real fruit on the bottom, and that whole kind of yogurt culture that we're in right now, that people are eating Greek yogurt so much. It looks just like a Greek yogurt container that you would pop in your lunch or eat as a snack. And so the old school cottage cheese now has this modern twist. So I think that's a really great trend. And I also saw Wassa crackers that I also kind of grew up with. It's just been around for ages. And then I'm like there and I'm tasting them. And there was all these young dietitians like thinking, oh, this is like some new, whole grain cracker. And like, oh my gosh, they didn't grow up with them like I did. But it's another old school food that's suddenly on trend.
That's right. And it's funny because in years past, the last couple of years, gluten-free was giant, right? This year, not as prevalent just because it's not the buzzword. It's sort of mainstream now, right? But I did go by the sorghum booth. And sorghum, my friend Sharon Palmer, she's been on the show. She's a plant-based dietitian. She was working at their booth, and it's an interesting ancient grain, and it kind of looks like the pearled couscous, and it's got a nice mouthfeel, kind of chewy. So sorghum is something you might be seeing more of. And then, quinoa, still going strong. I went by the Now Foods booth, and they have these adorable little Q-cups, quinoa cups. And
Yes,
I'm holding
I
one
like
in my hand right now, ready in 5 minutes, savory garlic and mushroom. And I actually visited Now Foods right before FNCE started. They had like a blogger event. And the first night we were there, we did this big cooking event where they said, okay, everybody has to cook with a Q cup, and then you can create anything from there. And they gave us this whole table filled with ingredients. And our group did this quinoa bowl, because bowls are so popular, where we had the quinoa. We did plain, and then we did plain, and we also used some of the savory garlic and mushroom. And then we topped the bowl with, let's see, we did toasted nuts. We did, pumpkin seeds. We did diced apples. It was like a fall thing. And then we did the coolest thing. We took parsnips and we cut them into these very thin sticks and cooked them in olive oil. So sauteed them. And they were like these little crispy parsnip kind of fries.
I like that.
Oh my gosh. It was so delicious. So you're starting with this very convenient Q cup, and then you're looking in your fridge and your pantry and you're saying, oh, what can I do with that? How can I turn that into a meal? So that was really fun.
That's brilliant. And that's what I love about some of these healthy foods in a hurry. They starting with an, instant Q cup like that, with making quinoa very convenient, but you can have that as a base and mix it up like you did for the bowl. I really like that idea. And a lot of things were, I noticed like that. I mean, Quaker had their overnight oat cups that you just add water like that, making that convenient. Did you taste the cauliflower pizza crust? I mean, that was,
yes.
That's a big trend at home, making cauliflower pizza crust. And then stores were starting to sell the cauliflower already, chopped up to make it even easier to make things out of cauliflower, like a pizza crust. And now you can buy the ready-made pizza crust made from cauliflower, and making it even more convenient.
Yeah, I love that. I did try the cauliflower because I like cauliflower rice. I used to make it myself, where you take a box grater, you shred the cauliflower, and then you could buy the frozen cauliflower rice or fresh cauliflower rice, and now you can buy the pizza crust. I tried that product at FNCE, but a Trader Joe's also sells a cauliflower crust. The one that I tried was called Cauliflower Foods, and it was really good. So for someone who's gluten-free or just trying to, eat more veggies, that's a great option.
It is a great option. And I love some of these trends that may start, you see them trending on Pinterest or on Instagram, and people are, food bloggers are making this at home. And then all of a sudden it shows up in the grocery store. And to make it easier for you to jump in on that cauliflower trend or whatever it is. But they're, companies that are seeing what's trending and offering this up. So I'm seeing that happen at so many instances.
And I will, by the way, everybody, put links to all these food companies on the show notes page on lizshealthytable.com/podcast. Janet, one more thing that I know you noticed was this focus on the farmer. People really want to know, where does my food come from? So they brought the farmers to us. In fact, they brought an entire cranberry bog to us this year. Tell everybody a little bit about the insanely creative ocean spray booth.
Well, it was just fantastic. I mean, that I think was hands down, they won the exhibit floor with that. Tucked away in one big corner of the exhibit hall was an entire cranberry bog. This is how cranberries actually grow. And so dietitians were able to get all dressed up in the big,
the waiters, yep.
Yes, and then the rubber boots and all of that, and just get in there into the water in with the cranberry bog. And I took a lot of pictures of people just enjoying it. I didn't even do it myself. The line was so long, but I just enjoyed watching people interact with it. And people were taking videos. They were throwing cranberries up in the air. It was just great. But, it's all about understanding where food comes from, how it's grown. And that was certainly a major message in the heritage for Ocean Spray and the cranberry growers. But I saw that throughout many, many booths. I love that the blueberry booth had a blueberry grower there, and she had a big button so you knew that she was a grower, and she was there talking about it. They had several booths had virtual reality, so you put on the goggles and then you could see the whole, if they couldn't bring a bog or something to you, they let you experience kind of the journey that this food made. Florida orange juice had a kind of grove to glass virtual reality,
right, and the honey board
love that.
With the bees.
Yes, perspective from a bee. So I think, the interesting things that exhibitors are doing to try to tell more of their story. They're trying to really talk about everything that they stand for, that, sustainability is a theme, how food is grown, the care that goes into it. And so, they're finding some creative ways to tell those stories. And virtual reality was one of the ways that I noticed that some of the exhibitors, the approach that they were taking.
I couldn't agree more. I am always thrilled when companies talk the talk about sustainability, but also walk the walk. And so the more we as consumers push that and let food companies know that we're interested in that and that matters to us, the better. And I will say one of the favorite things, we always grab tons of food products and we're eating as we go through, but the Honey Board handed out this lip balm, and it's like a little beehive, and you open it up and it's got the lip balm inside. So this makes me very happy. So thank you, Honey Board, for my lovely lip balm.
I missed that too.
Yeah, you see, Jen, you got to hang out with me more at FNCE. When you miss the lip balm, you kind of,
Right.
You spent too much time at Ocean Spray. You blew it, okay? Anything else, Janet, before we end today's show?
I was very encouraged by the exhibits this year at FNCE. Like I said, they're much more, I love seeing these smaller brands show up and wanting to educate dietitians about what they're doing, what they believe in, their new offerings. I thought that was very encouraging. And it was kind of the theme of the whole FNCE for me. I mean, hearing Kimbal Musk and talking about food is the new internet and everything that he's doing to really advance the good food movement. I was very encouraged by that, and I felt like a lot of the exhibitors this year really reflect today's new good food movement. So I was encouraged.
I will add a link to Kimbal Musk. That would be Elon Musk's brother, Elon Musk of Tesla, and May Musk, who is a dietitian and also a cover girl. And yes. She's 69 years old, 70, and that's a power family. But Kimbal Musk is doing a lot with school gardens, where he's raising or elevating the gardens so that kids interact with them on the playground because they become part of that school landscape. And that is a cool movement. So I'm going to provide a link to that in my show notes. And I just can't thank you enough, Janet, for coming on today's show.
Well, it's been a pleasure. It's my first time with you, Liz, so I enjoyed it.
Well, we're only in episode 15, so consider yourself, among my top, dietitian experts. So hopefully you can come on the show next year for FNCE 2018.
I look forward to that.
Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Liz's Healthy Table. Please stop by my website, lizshealthytable.com/podcast. Today's show notes will have links to all of these amazing and creative food companies and some of the oldies and goodies that we talked about today. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram, Pinterest, and Twitter. And if you like the show, and I sure hope you do, stop by iTunes and post a review. Until next time, thanks for listening to Liz's Healthy Table.